Hello and welcome along to the latest episode of the Yorkshire Football Podcast. Tom sitting in for Dom in the hosting seat this week as we spend another hour or so talking all things Yorkshire football. Coming up in this episode, we've set ourselves another challenge to discuss in detail. In previous weeks, we've discussed the best players to have played in Yorkshire. We've created our best Yorkshire 11s. And we've discussed our favourite managers as well. So sticking with the manager theme, we're picking out the top 10 managers to have managed clubs in Yorkshire. More of that to come. But first off, let's introduce this week's quartet, which includes a very special guest. First of all, not so special guest, but we love him all the same. It's our resident Sheffield Wednesday fan, John Riley. John, we're on Zoom. You've had to sit right next to your router just to make sure the internet works. All good?
It feels like I'm in Dark Ages. It feels like I'm in Lancashire. That's how bad it feels here.
And hopefully with a bit of a better internet connection. We're with Mr. Doncaster himself, we'll call him, Matt Flanagan. Flanagan, how are we?
Good evening, mate. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Demoted to the spare room this evening.
Yeah, it's pretty standard white wall, no nonsense Zoom call background that you've gone for there. Quite like it.
That's just Doncaster in general, isn't it?
That's very true. I didn't want to say. We're delighted to say that joining us this week on the Yorkshire Football Podcast is former Sheffield Wednesday, Leeds United man, among others, and the face of the Sky Bet EFL on Sky Sports. It's David Prutton. How are we doing, Prutts?
I'm really, really well, gents. Thank you very much for having me along, and I can obviously see you all. And it's varying shades of magnolia, which again sums up possibly our Yorkshire approach to decoration. Keep it simple, lads. Let other people furnish it, i.e. the better ones, the better halves inside the house. Give them the flourishes. But no, I'm good, and you all look very, very well, which is awesome.
It's nice to have someone on the pod who actually knows what they're talking about, to be fair. So thanks a lot for that.
You talk yourself, Tom.
Yeah, I will speak for myself there, to be fair. Just how much are you missing football at the moment? Because we say it every week. It's awful without it, isn't it?
It is. I'm sure everyone that you've spoken to, everyone that we seem to speak to, they always get the serious stuff out of the way, don't they? So obviously everything has got, understandably, is in this situation. We understand why we're at this kind of impasse. But if you think about it from a fundamental love of football, we all miss it. We all miss the competitive nature of what we see twice a week, the area of debate that it throws up. I think we've all enjoyed a little bit of reminiscing on certain bits and pieces of different seasons and different matches. But there's nothing like the cut and thrust of every single league game that you see there in front of your face. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of footballers as well that want to get back at it. But obviously, only when it's safe to do so.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping it comes back soon. But like I say, when it is safe to do so and get back on the pitch. So hopefully that won't be too far away and we'll actually have some football to talk about. So as I said, we're going to be looking
Hang on. That sounded like a very pre-recorded answer from Prutts there. We don't want Sky Sports Prutts on this podcast. There's no auto cues here, pal. We want 10 Jaeger bombs after Cheltenham.
You know the other side. Only the three Jaeger bombs after Cheltenham. Come on, I mean, you obviously didn't see me go anywhere near my pocket for my wallet, did you? Which is the only reason why I followed you into that bar. But there is that pre-recorded side, which hopefully, I mean, sometimes forgive me for lapsing into. I'd like to think that's because I'd say there's no professionalism, but we all know that sort of rubbish, don't we?
What a guy!
It's the footballer / presenter trap of going back to certain answers, doesn't it? Thanking the fans. And we'll go again next week.
Before we get stuck into that, let me ask you boys from that point of view, as Riley's quite obviously flagged that up, and as we listen to it now, we understand the impact that footballers have, don't we? We understand the impact that their opinion being put out in the media can have. What you're happier with, a quiet footballer who kind of cracks on with it on the pitch, or do you feel, you three, that they need to be out there as kind of voice boxes right now?
It's interesting to hear, isn't it? I don't know what you boys think, but it's always interesting to hear what they think, considering how much pressure they're under at the moment to get back playing under seemingly whatever circumstances. Flan, as you pulled a bit of an uncertain face.
Yeah, well, I think you hit nail on the head there. It's uncertainty. Tyrone Mings, I've noticed, he's been quite vocal on Twitter lately, as if he's suddenly taking it upon himself to defend the football industry. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do for him to. I don't know whether it's because he feels like he has to do that because no one else is, or I'm just unsure on it, to be honest with you.
Do you know what? I don't mind footballers speaking acts. Have you seen State of our Prime Minister? Right, stuff he comes out with on TV on a daily basis, right? Footballers used to get kind of brushed with that like thick stick, didn't they? Like, thick footballers. But kind of he's lowered the level, he's lowered the bar now. So anytime a footballer actually comes out with something kind of coherent on Twitter or in the TV, you actually think, yeah, fair play, mate. Like, come out and tell us you're missing it. I don't mind it. Come on.
What's the scariest part about what you've just said there, John? The fact that of how you've spoken about the Prime Minister, or the fact that is a man with a genuine job that can change stuff, and he's talking like that. That must be the scarier part about it. When a footballer says something, you kind of go, well, good, bad, or indifferent, whether it was a bit silly, whether it's made him look daft, you know what I mean? You can kind of take some of it with a pinch of salt. When it's the man who sets the legislation in the country, that's slightly different, I think, isn't it?
Definitely.
I know that Boris is a weekly listener of this podcast, so I hope he's not listening this week. I hope he's
probably never heard of Yorkshire.
Not wrong.
It's very, very good point. Actually, to link into that, I want to ask about Danny Rose's comments. What do we all think of this? Have we all seen what Danny Rose says? Would we like me to read out the quote for those that haven't?
Right, might as well.
The government is saying bring football back because it is going to boost the nation's morale. So he's saying this on an Instagram live. I don't give a fuck about the nation's morale, bro. People's lives are at risk. Football shouldn't even be spoken about coming back until the numbers have dropped massively. I'm going to guess the amount of stars that he says it's bollocks, but half sums up maybe what the footballers are thinking at the moment. I don't know what you lads think.
I'll jump in there. Like I just work in an office environment. I sit 4 feet away from the next person. And I'm a little bit kind of apprehensive about going back to work. So like having to kind of brush past people in the office, walk down corridors, go into the kitchen at the same time. So imagine kind of sharing a changing room with, 16 to 18 guys before a game, a pitch with 22 players, kind of your training staff, everyone around you. I know they're going to be testing these players kind of stringently, but there's going to be no kind of actually definitive way that you can stop the virus, even in these training groups. So why shouldn't, if he is a little bit worried about it, why shouldn't he come out and say it? I think he's right. Just because footballers are paid really, really well and kind of the flagship kind of people, the target for the kind of media and for even politicians during this crisis, why shouldn't he come out and say it if he is worried? Like, fair play to him. Like, I'm worried about going back to work, so why shouldn't he, just because he's paid 46 times more than me? I don't know, maybe 46,000 times.
But that's always the debate with that, isn't it? About if you read anything, and this is me not trying to defend footballers in any way, shape, or form, but if you read anything in the media, normally when it's a kind of detrimental piece, 90% of the time their wages will be put in there, or a ballpark figure of it would be like the Spurs or the such and such fullback who is on 150 grand a week said this. There's not many other stories that you'd read in a paper where the wages would come into it, would they? They'll say, no. And then the Prime Minister, who's on X amount of money, said this. That's not part of it. And like I said, we're going on John's point of watching that on a daily basis, and someone with genuine power to change people's lives, then what a footballer says reiterates workplaces. And I know a football pitch is slightly different, but it will reiterate people's fears across the board. It's that grey area that we find ourselves in with regard to moving forward of how fearful should we be and how positive should we be. I think most common sense thinking people have got a foot in both camps, because without the positivity side of it, we'll constantly live in fear and nothing will ever change or move forward or progress.
Prutts, if you were still playing, how would you feel?
It's a good question, because before we all kind of got sent home and told to kind of quite obviously stay where we are, that was a question I was putting to lads that I was working with, current and ex-footballers, and it was hard to ask the current ones, because it's people come to you like you've done there, Flanders, and said, well, what would you do? And you're kind of thinking, I couldn't even put myself into a position that was anything like it. because it's not. If you're at a club that's been poorly run financially, if there's question marks about the future of the club, almost a little bit of that is similar. But the fact that it's not only national but international, completely global thing, it's tough. I think part of me would get to the stage where they're probably at now, where they want to get back to doing what you do, because we've done. I mean, we talk about Zoom calls, and that's the in thing to have now, isn't it? I mean, we've all seen inside several different prominent footballers' bedrooms, I don't know, 7th bedrooms, 6th kind of playroom, or wherever or whatever kind of luxury they live in. We love footballers when we can watch them do what they do, and I think they prefer it when they are just there doing what they're doing, which is playing football and being exceptionally good at it.
Right. I've got a second question for you, Prutts. Good answer, that, by the way. You definitely reading this off a script, but go on. Right. at the start of lockdown, right, you're stuck down in that London. You got to pick 2 other members of the Sky Sports football team to go into lockdown quarantine with down there. Who are you picking and why?
Oh, wow.
What question that is, Riley.
Great question.
That's why I had my hand up.
That was good, and
He's very polite.
As any good pupil did, he waited till he was asked, and he didn't kind of fidget around. Right, that's a very good question. I would go. Again, the politician hat comes on first. I love them all to bits, and they're a wonderful bunch of people. For someone just purely because he fascinates me from the hair downwards, Keith Andrews. We've done a few of these calls, and we got an email through about the kind of composition, which, in all honesty, I didn't read. Hence the fact I've gone with white and I'm sticking with white, and that's it. Whereas we went to Keith's house over in Dublin. He's got a nice plant, and he's got a very tasteful picture and all this type of stuff. So I'd say Keith and Don Goodman. Don's a good. As you all know, he's very good company.
Very good.
Very, very good company. Plenty of stories that I wouldn't tire of listening to. But then, like I said, it could be 2 of many. But I think from the lads I've mentioned there, that the fact that you probably met them both, I'd like to think that you'd back them up.
Who does the cooking, do you think?
Who does the cooking? Me. I'm a Daban now. It's a joke.
Has the time in lockdown improved cooking skills, do we think? Not for me. Mine hasn't improved at all.
The thing is, the good thing, we've obviously got more time and patience, haven't we? We can actually follow, without this turning into this an episode of the Good Housekeeping Guide, we can actually follow recipes and stuff.
Very true. Very true. Right, let's get away from cooking and maybe back to football just a bit. So as I said, we're going to be looking at our top 10 managers to have kind of played their trade in Yorkshire soon. But first off, given how we're joined by footballing royalty, and again, not John Riley, but David Prutton, we're going to spend the first part of the podcast looking back on your career, finding out your views on the footballing world as it is at the moment. And I suppose the best place to start, actually, is you've kind of touched on it there, but just how are you finding the lockdown life and being inside almost 24/7?
It's I won't for 1 second say that I'm in a position where I could remotely moan about anything. To be honest, I miss doing what I've come to grow into, hopefully, which is I see it as nothing more than a pleasure. It's good fun. John asked me about the people that I would want to hang around with. It's a group of people that I would be very, very happy to spend a lot of time with, and it's good fun. And whenever us fellas have worked together, hopefully it's been relatively light. We've got things covered. We've got good questions out of people, good answers out of people, and we've always managed to make sure that the interest and the focal point of why we're there is why we're there, and I'd like to think that we've done that. But it's just the nuts and bolts of it, isn't it? When I've come in and chatted to you, Tom, in the past, and we speak about it's just a wonderful thing of how a week in football can change. A poor result one week can be completely wiped away the next. If you're a fan, say Flanners has gone to watch Donny, and Donny, I mean, thrown in the kind of performance that has made him go home and kick the cat and then go out and try and drown his sorrows. There's always
regularly.
Hope. Oh, exactly. There's always that hope of next week. You go there and you live in hope that it's going to be better. And again, John, maybe from the point of view of what we've seen with Wednesday, especially this season and over the course of the last 5 years, it goes to show how unpredictable it is. And that's probably what I miss the most about it, the unpredictability of what the weekend will possibly bring. Case in point, we did Leeds Swansea in one of the last, I think it was a midweek game leading up to when we all kind of got sent away and told to chill out. And on paper, both two teams haven't been doing particularly well. I'm not saying that in any way, shape or form we give it any less than 100% and the full works and the full kind of the party frock and the makeup. And you're kind of thinking 1-0 here might be all right. I think it was 4-all or 5-all, something utterly ridiculous. At that level of football, you're going, well, that was an interesting Friday night, considering we thought it might be a little bit of a damp squib. And that's the unpredictability, that's the jeopardy in it, which I think that's why you buy into as a football fan, don't you?
Yeah.
Right.
Go on. I was going to say, you're allowed on the podcast because being born in Hull, you're allowed to be part of the Yorkshire Football Podcast.
So, can I stop? It's from Hull. Where's your accent? Like, where are you actually? Because you don't sound like us. You don't sound like anyone from Hull. You don't sound like Dean Windass.
Well, it's right. It was, I'd say, partly. I went to a good school in Hull. Believe me, there are good schools in Hull. And then having moved to Nottingham at 16, then down to Southampton at 21. I'm not saying I picked up an accent. I'd like to think it's kind of maybe de-regionalised a little bit. Don't worry. I mean, we were doing a feature about the Euros, and every time I said Euros, and I listened to it back and thought, there's the whole there. That bit's never going to go. Oh no, and stuff like that. But it's pretty. You know me. I'm all pretense, John. It's probably me trying to put across something that I'm not. When you catch me off guard, I'll be like, oh no, Riley's here.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you about that Nottingham Forest move shortly, but I know John wants to kind of test how truly Yorkshire you are, and this is a surprise to us all. We've not heard any of these yet, so John, take it away.
Yeah, so obviously being a Yorkshire lad, well, homicide, but we clash as Yorkshire now, one of our own Prutts. We'd like to test that Yorkshire-ness with a little quiz here. So I've got 10 quiz questions. I'm going to try and rattle through them quickly. Anything less than a 7 and you're banished.
Jeez.
Anything less than a 4, you go to Lancashire. Anything less than a 3, down in that London. Right, ready?
They're London.
No pressure.
Ready.
Let's go. Right, which Yorkshire club won the English top flight the most times?
Leeds.
Wrong, it's Sheffield Wednesday. When is Yorkshire Day?
Oh, what?
That's difficult, that.
I know, and the thing is, I was down south for it. That's what I remember. Yorkshire Day. Christ knows.
August the 1st. Bad start, you Prutts. Come on.
That's awful, isn't it?
Mate, I know
not for two. Not for two.
I book that day off every year, so I know. You should too.
You bleed
Which
white
Yorkshire-
rose, that's why.
Which Yorkshire club were the first to win the English top flight 3 times in a row?
Oh, mate, this is. I mean, this as bad starts go. This is awful.
3 times in a row. 1924,
I'll go-
1927.
Small clue for you.
Huddersfield.
Correct. Yeah, stab in the dark.
There you go.
One
Stab in
from
the
3.
dark.
Right.
That was my nickname. Go on.
Name of the pub in Emmerdale.
The Woolpack.
Can you name me 4 horse race courses in Yorkshire?
Donny, York,
There's 9.
Wetherby.
Yeah.
Wetherby. What? You're interrupting my train of thought. It's trying to put me off. Beverley.
Correct. You could have also had Ripon, Catterick, Thirsk, Pontefract, Redcar.
Basically, Ripon, Catterick, Thirsk are all closer than the ones that I just named, which is amazing. Yeah.
That's it. In which Yorkshire town was Ed Sheeran born?
Oh, Christ. Halifax.
Oh, you can bank on that answer from Prutts. Well, lad, gets it in one. An easy one here. How many county championships have Yorkshire County Cricket Club won? If you don't know this one, get out of town.
Is it a trick question?
Nope.
5.
32.
Close.
Nearly.
Nearly, Prutts. Which international sporting event started in Leeds in 2014?
The Tour de France.
Correct, the Grand Depart, as they call it in Leeds.
As I pronounce it as well in France.
If Yorkshire were a country, rather, where would it have finished at the 2012 Olympics?
Oh, something ridiculous like Can I give you a ballpark figure or in an exact position?
You get it between 2 either side. I'll give it you.
Top 5.
I like the optimism. I do like that optimism. It's 12th.
How would
Top 5. So I've gone for like bigger than America, China.
And finally, what is the most valuable liquid in the world according to Forbes per centilitre?
What questions these are?
Valuable liquid in the world, and it's to do with Yorkshire.
Correct.
Oh,
I may have been lying about Forbes and it being the most valuable, but
You're not drinking it now. Can I see? It's what you're shoving down your neck in that can. Christ. Is it obvious?
yes.
That can't get. Oil.
No, it's Yorkshire tea. Bloody hell.
God.
Hey, what's he done there? I tell you what, he's performed very badly there.
Christ.
That could be banishment to bloody dark side, that.
How many points for that?
1, 2, 3. You got 5. Oh, 5 out of 10.
So where does that leave me? Someone like Skipton way?
Yeah, it's on M62, going wrong direction, I'm telling you.
Oh, good. That farm in the middle of the M62.
That's it. Oh, that point on M62 where he always says this is the highest motorway in England. Just as we told him, that one.
And it's always blaking on a summer's day.
That's the one.
Like it, John. I'm impressed with that. Tough questions as well. Very tough questions.
I know. It's gone before Piers Morgan on me there, hasn't he?
I know.
You've got to spend your Tuesday doing something, aren't you? What was supposed to?
Surprised you didn't go full on Piers and just rip into you whenever you weren't giving proper answers.
Just keep going. Just keep going at me. Like, whoa.
No, I'll say it again. What I want is this. Right.
Thought you were Piers Morgan then, Tom.
No, yeah. I heard, pal. Calm down.
I can aspire. So where were we? We're talking football, and you mentioned you were born in Hull, Prutts, but you ended up at Nottingham Forest.
I did.
Interesting move. How did that come about?
It was playing for Humberside, as Riley mentioned earlier on, which quite obviously got disbanded. Not because I played for them and ruined it forever, but because obviously governmental
That's what they told you anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Can you sod off and take that mini county with you?
Paying you too much, weren't they?
Well, that's why. Yeah. Through parking tickets a lot. I was at the Hull City School of Excellence for a bit, but that was when Hull City were at Boothby Park, dusty old gym out the back. And it wasn't what it became, and obviously it's kind of reverted a little bit, but they're still way ahead of where they were when I was there. And there was a scout that came and spoke to me, man. I mean, very much something that you'd read in a book about some young kid becoming a footballer. The scout wanders over. I was the word with my dad. My dad spoke to me after the game. We went and did some School of Excellence training on a Tuesday and a Thursday in Nottingham. And then started playing for their, when I was in my last year at school, started playing for their under-17s on a Saturday, which meant that my fledgling rugby career at school, which was basically me and a lot of lads stoving people's heads in for the best part of an hour on a Saturday afternoon, dressing it up as a sport, came to an abrupt halt. And I went and did that. And then after I left, I got offered a schoolboy contract and then 3-year scholarship YTS scheme it was, when I left school at 16, which absolutely obviously snapped my hand off and did my GCSEs. Everyone went to Malia or Magaluf. I went to Forest and began pre-season training.
Some would say better than Magaluf, etc. I think considering the career.
Magaluf's not got hooters, has it? So
probably not. Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, you mentioned you were at Forest. Then you're at Southampton as well. 2.5 million, I think it was.
Correct. The
transfer fee.
I mean, you literally don't. You literally don't get much for that.
Can I just jump in there on Forest? So you must be kind of a young kid there. What, 97, 98?
I joined in 98.
98. So was Van Hooijdonk still there when you joined?
The summer that we all joined at my raft of lads at the same time was that infamous summer when Pierre buggered off for 2 months, said the rest of his team was crap, Because basically it was Pierre and the likes of Kevin Campbell, players such as that got them promoted. I mean, they were well-worthy champions the previous season under Dave Bassett. I mean, swagger to the league. And then Pierre, I think there was some form of perhaps understanding that Pierre would then move on to a Premier League club, and you kind of going, well, hang on, you don't know Forest is now a Premier League club, don't you? I mean, obviously there might have been a different wage structure. It was after somewhere, but yeah, he buggered off for 6 weeks and was just battering everyone, which was bizarre. And then he came back in, and all the first team kind of took him back on board, but it started pretty ominously for Forest. They beat or they drew with Arsenal at Highbury, and I mean the season got progressively worse, culminating. Probably the nadir of it was them getting thumped by Man U 8-1, which I was, with hindsight, it was an absolute pleasure that, because I was a ball boy and it was the Beckham, Scholes, Giggs, seeing them up close and personal. Solskjaer came on as a sub and scored 4. I mean, that really was them in their absolute pomp, really, and it was a pleasure to watch them.
What was it like, Rowan Trent? Did you ever kind of see any kind of incidents with Pierre or anything like that? 'Cause I know it was kind of a bit of a turbulent couple of seasons for Forest. Obviously, they got promoted, relegated, and then I think they were expected to do better in the Championship when we went down. Actually, haven't been back, have they?
No. I mean, a lot of the players that got them up had since moved on. I mean, they were a very good, solid squad of players that probably fell between the bracket of bottom end Premier League, top end of Championship. There was one or two kind of around when I eventually got into the team, and then David Platt had taken over. He was the one that got into the team under, but him and the senior players, they didn't seem to mould together too well. And that's not me saying. I loved what Platt did from a coaching and a man management point of view. I owe him the start to my career that he went on to be, wherever that ended up. But he was fantastic with me. I just don't think he saw eye to eye with some of the senior players, because he was still he was player manager, and he'd have finishing sessions, and he was still kind of like the best player there, even in his mid to late 30s. And it was, I don't know whether it was that thing of sometimes when you get a player of his caliber, a very top level former England international, sometimes ideas don't quite translate with players that aren't quite as good, do they?
When he was still player manager, was he starting himself?
What do you mean?
Was he actually playing?
Yeah. I played with him he played in midfield a couple of times. And he probably put me next to him because out of the two of us, he could pass and I could tear ass around and cover his backside. But yeah, he was fascinating stories with regard to, because the coaching staff they brought in, there was a fellow with him called Dennis Booth, who's from Hull, there's an honorary Hull.
Boothie, yeah.
Boothie, the Booth dog. He was with him at Aston Villa, and he was part of the coaching staff there, and he'd tell you a little story. I mean, Dennis has got some fantastic stories, none that I don't think you can probably repeat in front of anyone without actually offending most of the room. But he used to talk about how David used to stay behind and train and stuff when he was at Villa. And the goal that he scored against Belgium is something that they'd worked on. Like the ridiculous volley over the course of his back of his shoulder, which made him as an international footballer, was something that they'd actually worked on. And that's me not saying that Boothie went, come the 1990 World Cup, son, when this happens, you'll know what to do. But he was a fantastic player, wasn't he? I mean, gone to Italy, one of our best exports over there, and then came back. I mean, I don't really know where it is, because I don't really know where it is now. Obviously, last seen celebrating Man City's title triumph in the very dying embers of the game, but I don't know where he's gone since then. But he's a fellow that I always got on all right with, and then Paul Hart came in, blooded the youngsters, farmed out a load of the older lads, and set off a new generation.
I want to bring up, before we kind of touch on your glorious return to Yorkshire with Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday, there was the spell at Southampton, and I mean, you were there for 4 years, was it? 4 years? You had
pretty much 4 years, exactly. Yeah, January to January, yeah.
Down on the south coast, but during that time, you had spells on the sideline, disciplinary, but injury as well. Pretty much missing, I think, a significant part one of the seasons.
Yeah,
wasn't it, for injury? Is that probably the one club in your career that you probably have the most regrets? Maybe considering that time at the club, but necessarily not the amount of games that came with it.
Possibly. I had a good couple of years, which I really enjoyed, and managed to. And it's worked out latterly when I've been kind of working in the media, and doing stuff that, without sounding too grand, gets kind of broadcast around the world. And it always, say if you're doing a commentary on like a Premier League channel, when the commentator introduces you as former Premier League midfielder David Prutton, there's part of me going, if anyone would be remotely bothered on the other side of the world, furiously Googling, going, well, yeah, former by, and just a hand. Come on, it's not the Gareth Barry era, like getting towards 700 like Premier League games, and it always makes me laugh. But that they gave me the opportunity to do that. Then a moment of ill discipline, which cost me both in money and in game time. And then off the back of that season, he's quite rightly said, I managed to do the fashionable thing of break a metatarsal, which was quite just arduous and hard to get back from. And then a couple of months after coming back, knackering a lot of ligaments in my other ankle. And before then, so that would have been 23, 24 at that time, possibly. I'd had a really good run from making my debut at 18 to getting all the way through, then playing a significant amount of games without any injury. Discipline was always the one that held me back from actually getting on the pitch. But
I think you do yourself a disservice there, mate, to be fair, because you played 62 times in the Premier League, which is obviously it's no mean feat. And having seen you play at Wednesday, it's actually really surprising that you actually made 62 appearances in the Premier League. So, mate, if I were you, I'd get a tattoo of that or something. I don't know, get it out on the
just get a banner.
Yeah, mate, yeah. Big it up. Don't be downplaying it like that, buddy. Come on.
Or maybe like a business card. Can I just hand you this before I go? 62 times. It's
That's it.
And it's part of. I mean, I don't say it in any way, shape, or form to be consciously and needlessly self-deprecating, but by Christ, I know there's a list that's as long as all of our arms put together and several other body parts of players that were better than me that played in the Premier League. But
yeah, but I often think even to make it into become a pro, you've literally got. I was thinking this the other day. Like, you've got to be the best player in your school, then the best player in your village, then the best player in your small little town, and then the best player in your team that you represent. So I think even if the lad who I played with at school made it, I think, as high as a championship, he was my captain at school. And he's the only one within kind of, 25, 30 mile radius who even came close to making it. So honestly, 62 appearances in the Premier League, I'm not saying cock out, but I'd be along those lines.
We could get yours out on my behalf if you want. That could give us all something to smile at. But I'll take your point there, because I can talk about it and I've spoken to you all at length, whether it's to do something remotely, and I'm inverted commas, remotely professionally, or away from anything remotely professional. And we've dissected several different footballers and all that type of stuff. And like I said, it's maybe it's the inherent way of me filtering where you play football. But yeah, I absolutely buy into that. It was something I always wanted to do. I had the good fortune to do it, but I was really fucking dedicated. There was no sacrifice, because I believe it's a choice that you make to become what you want to do, and that's what I wanted to do. I remember reading there was an article about Raheem Sterling moving from Liverpool to Manchester City, talking about him being greedy and he's that, all these different motivations. And this journalist very, very kind of cleverly backtracked it. He said, well, how many times would Raheem Sterling have been in that position where three of his teammates got let go from the under-14s? He moves on. Someone else gets let go. Someone gets a full-time contract. Someone else doesn't get a full-time contract. A lad gets 3 years and says, thanks for 3 years, you're not going to be a professional footballer. There's been some wonderful articles, not wonderful, there's been some very in-depth articles with regard to Manchester United, younger players not making it, and Sonny saying, thanks, son, but can you sod off now? So there is that ruthless side of it that you've got to get through mentally and emotionally to get. Obviously, you've got to be able to hopefully chop a bag of cement and have the legs and the lungs to be able to get around a football pitch, but you need something, maybe a screw slightly loose, that gets you to where the top of whatever crop you're going to get to.
And so obviously, I have obviously, we know each other outside of this, but I've met you at one of your kids before. What do they know about your kind of Premier League past, being a player, or what if you ask them like what you do, what career you've had? Do they know about that? Have you shown them what they think? What you kind of think? What does Daddy do?
There's a little bit. My daughter's, because she's slightly older, she remembers. She remembers two places: Swindon, which is not quite as glamorous, and we had footballing wise, we were awful for a season. We were terrible. But then Sheffield Wednesday, she remembers, and my little lad remembers more. And there is a little bit of kind of relevance there. My father-in-law played for Southampton as well, which he was in the kind of Mick Shannon era, so like the proper Southampton team that was really, really good. And there was it was a while ago when he was younger, my little lad. He mentioned we've got friends down there. Mentioned to one of his friends' mates that his granddad used to play for Southampton. That's like, just your granddad? He went, yeah. Like,
wow.
Firmly put in place, and it's with the kind of families that we knock around with down there. It's never far from. Oh yeah, look, his little Caleb. Yeah, his granddad used to play for Saints. And as you know, lads are good at ripping the ass out the same joke continually, aren't they?
More than 62 times in Premier League, though.
That'll be my comeback next time.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed a long career. 16 years, I think you played, didn't you? It was 98.
Managed to bring it out for, yeah.
Well, in that career, though, you played for Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday, as you mentioned there. You returned to Nottingham Forest before moving to Leeds, but Leeds wanted to sign you at the same time as Forest. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. Dennis Wise was in charge. They were fighting for their lives at the foot of the Championship. I wasn't getting a look in at Southampton. I wanted to go somewhere with a bit of familiarity. That's probably why when Forest came in, that's why I wanted to go there. They were looking to get in the playoffs in League One. And just fancied familiar surroundings. I mean, I didn't think, fuck Leeds, I don't want to go. I didn't think that at all. I thought it was that semblance of being away from...
out of context Twitter account.
You can say that, though.
Exactly.
We agree.
In capitals, bang. It was, but having been down south and away from familiarity, because I went to Forest at 16 and left at 21, so I mean that felt like a footballing home. So I wanted to go back there for a bit. And the great thing, not the great thing, the funny thing. So and Wisey, who I played with at Southampton very, very briefly, he said, "Well, is it a definite no? Prutts definite?" I said, "Yeah, it's going to have to be Wisey. I just feel like, I want to go home a little bit." And he was like, "Well, be sure, because I'm not going to ring you again. You can piss off once I put this phone down." I mean, half jokingly, but half kind of like, he quite obviously means it because there's part of him that's mental. So I said, "Yeah, no, I'm right. Wisey got the right thing." Put the phone down. Went off to Forest. Played for them. Got in the semi-finals of the playoff. Came on as a sub. Got booked twice. Got sent off. We lost the game. We completely fell short.
Yeovil,
that was Yeovil. That was it was two fouls on the same man, Nathan Jones. Who'd have thought it? It was a lovely little fella, and I managed to smash him twice. Within a very short.
Do you think you're angry about kind of not starting in such a big game? That when you came on, you thought got something to prove, or you just thought, "Nah, I'm just gonna go around smashing people here"?
No, I'm just a bit of a dick sometimes, John. That's what it is. And and the ironic thing about that, jumping forward slightly before I'm sure we'll come back, was so and it's probably happening more now on Sky Sports than it has in a long time, when they replay old games, and we do a lot of playoff action. And I mean, it must be at least once or twice a month I get a text from, whether it's Jonesy or whether it's a mate of mine that's watching it in the gym, mid-morning, you're on again. Let me guess what game it is. Is it a rerun of a playoff game? Yeah. You've just been sent off. Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty much it, mate. I was only on for about 10 minutes. And there all the time. I'm sure someone in programming is there going, that div that keeps coming down here and doing stuff, I'll keep putting this game on and see people see straight through it.
Was that Yeovil playoff semi-final? Was that the one that, was it Aaron Davis who just turned into Messi?
He was unplayable that day, wasn't he? Unplayable.
Yeah, got a move, then just like filtered down the league.
Exactly. He was at Southampton as a kid, and I don't know whether I'd managed to piss him off when I was down there, but my God, he played with a bit between his teeth. And he's a good young lad, Aaron. And but yeah, you're absolutely right, Flanners. For that game and that game only, it was like open jawed going, where on earth does this come from?
So you were at Leeds for the infamous -15 season.
It was, yeah.
A crazy campaign, a crazy season. What would probably be your standout memory of not just your time at Leeds, but that season? Because there must have been some kind of good stories to come out of it. And kind of backs against the wall type mentality?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll start on a downer and work my way towards some form of euphoric crescendo.
Okay.
I mean, the downer involves obviously Flanders' best day of his life. One of them in recent living memory, which
you should see his smile
not
right
wrong,
now.
mate.
By the way,
Not
if you're
wrong.
listening, you should
was
see
not
his
wrong.
smile right now.
was managing to drag ourselves through to Wembley in the playoff final after Johnny Howson's heroics in the second leg against Carlisle, who was just phenomenal, and that kind of euphoria that we felt of a really good group of lads, really good squad, really together, and we just ran out of steam. Got to Wembley, and having worked there since, and having had the good fortune of working there since, you know, you can look at and if anyone's listening who hasn't been to a playoff, regardless of what division, they're fucking amazing. They're absolutely amazing days out. We get giddy around it, don't we, lads? And I mean, that's only because we've got free hospitality. But when the actual the spectacle of what the game is just fantastic. I think it's such a good way to. It's got its detractors, and it has done ever since it was introduced. But I think it's such a fantastic way to knit a season together, isn't it? You take Charlton last season going up with the last kick of the game. Stuff like that is what makes it legendary. But when I go there and work, I mean, more often than not, it's a warmer time of the year, but I just look at the pitch and it makes me feel knackered. I just remember how drained you felt when you want to go on a football pitch, and as we've all done in whatever variation of football we've played, we all want to go on the pitch and be as good as we possibly can. We all did that, and we all wanted to do that as a team for Leeds on that specific day. We just couldn't live up to it. Our fans were there for about 2 hours before. The half of Wembley Stadium that was Leeds was noisy. And that's not, again, fans, I'm not to the detriment of being a Donny fan, but my God, I was with them and in numbers, and they were so loud and so passionate, and they deserved it. We just couldn't come up with the goods, unfortunately, which that's part of what that season means. The rest of it, which was just joining, and I mentioned about Wisey, who thankfully backtracked on my piss off and never ring me ever again statement off the back of when I kind of like tailed to my eyes going, you said don't ring me again. Forrest have kind of said the same thing to me after that. So anything going? And ironically, what probably happened and helped in the favour was that financial situation they're in. He said, "Yep, come and get sorted, and we'll get the contract sorted as and when." Which you're kind of going, "Oh, we don't get to December," and it's still kind of going, "Come back next week, and I'll give you some money." But he was as good as his word. We had a wonderful pre-season where the most random bunch of people came in. You get some lads training for a day, you never saw them again. Some lads coming in for a week, never saw them again. Some lads hanging around and finally getting signed. It was just a really good, well put together bunch of lads that started the season well. Obviously, Dennis moved on, and Gus moved on first, which I think wobbled us a bit. And then you kind of saw the writing on the wall when Dennis opted to move on, and then Gary Mack comes in, and we navigate all the way to the playoff final, but unfortunately just couldn't get over that hurdle. But it was just good, really good fun. Expectation levels were inquisitive, shall we say. I'm sure there was a certain bracket of fans going, "Christ, we've had Alan Clark, we've had Norman Hunter, we've had Gordon Strachan, we've had Lee Chapman, we've had Harry Kewell, we've had Lee Bowyer. Look at this bunch of muppets. What on earth is going to happen here?"
Funny you say that, Prutts, because obviously I wasn't a huge. My knowledge of 2007, 2008 Leeds United wasn't that great, so I thought I'd go to the font of knowledge, which is Wiki, which for some reason on there it says here, Prutton became a cult hero amongst Leeds fans due to his humour in interviews and his Jesus-like appearance.
And her,
so no point in there is it mentioning kind of like ball action skills or football ability. It's his banter in interviews and his long hair.
I'm telling you, Riley, personality will get you a long way, mate. When that runs out, I'm knackered.
It was
but yeah, it was but I think that probably reflected how it was. It was a bunch of misfits. I mean, the lad who we had starting up front for us, I remember Wisey speak to him. He'll score goals. And I was like, "Who?" And he went, "Bexford." I was like, "Who the fuck are you talking about?" He went, "Jermaine Beckford." I was like, "Yes, who are you talking about?" And then saw him in person, saw him in games, and I was like, "Oh, actually, he's very, very good," and then progressed on to being extremely good, and the striker, the centre forward that good Leeds teams deserve, really. And he was spot on. And it was just, like I said, like cobbled together. There were lads. I mean, Alan Thompson was there. He I think he finished at the end of that season. I roomed with him before the playoff final. I remember I was sat watching Hull City, and Dean Windass obviously scoring the winner and sending them up the day before, and thinking, oh, well, Dino's done it. Maybe it's written in the stars. But a Yorkshire weekend, and well, it was a Yorkshire weekend, but for South Yorkshire, wasn't it? Not for the West. Jesus.
So you say them when you talk about Hull, Prutts. Who did you support when you were a kid then? Because obviously it doesn't sound like you were a Hull fan from the sounds of it.
I wasn't. It sounds a bit twee, but so Boothby Park, where we lived, was walking distance where we first lived in Hull, and I went a couple of times. I only went really to get on goals on Sunday, on Sunday lunchtimes with John Helm commentating. So if you position yourself behind the goal, as Hull inevitably shipped another goal, we were sat out. I managed to get myself like backed up in the corner, which again is horribly narcissistic. But again, you three will attest to that being quite true. But it was never. I was more about larking out with my mates and playing football. You know, the cliche 25-a-side, jumpers for goalposts, all that type of stuff. I watched the 1990 World Cup, which I loved, and it was all about playing. Never nail my colours to a mast. And I've had this discussion since and it's good because you get people that get proper, as you fellas can relate to, proper high and proper pissed off with football teams. Where I can I'm obviously thoroughly entertained and love watching a game of football, but I'm not sat there with my head in my hands if whichever team's lost, unless it's on my accumulator. But other than that, I don't do it.
But what about talking about nailing colours to the mast, Stephen? Are you KR or Hull FC?
Again, I've been to see both, and neither. I couldn't name you a player. I couldn't name you which one was better. I couldn't name you a coach of them. I know one plays at Craven Park. That's it.
Jeez, David, we should have interviewed that kind of career. So I've got that's more on fencing, buddy.
Then
that's less on fencing.
Just go, nah.
We'll maybe ask you a Leeds or Sheffield Wednesday question afterwards. But take us to Sheffield Wednesday then, a club where you experienced success in League One, and again a club. I suppose that select few clubs that you imagine as a player always sticks with you for a numerous amount of reasons.
It was amazing. It was, again, it's when you look back and you kind of think the broad spectrum of where you've been, or where I've been, sorry, not where you've been, in terms of where I've been as a footballer. There's some places that wouldn't be at the glamorous end of the scale. Having grown up and visited my grandparents in and around the area of Lincolnshire, I mean, Scunny's not going to be top of the footballing kind of the glossier end of the footballing world, but it's a place that served me very, very well, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing for them. But if you look at where I've looked out and managed to get to places like Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday, big, huge footballing institutions, not just in Yorkshire, but not only nationally. There'll be teams that have been known around the world. And to be able to say that you played there I think is a phenomenal thing. Wednesday was, and I know that when you compare big clubs with another big club, especially two big clubs in Yorkshire, where you said there's a lot of similarities. I'm sorry, Riley, but there is. Leeds fans are great. Wednesday fans are great. They're very knowledgeable. They're very passionate. They're very intense. They're very vocal. You know when you've been crap. You know when you've been good. And it was, we all grew up wanting to play football in front of thousands and thousands of people, which is what the likes of Leeds and Wednesday afforded me to do. And when a stadium like Hills was rocking, you absolutely know about it. And having known what that place was like, and it's like kind of a detour on something serious. I mean, when you know the history of Hillsborough, when you know, as we all do, about what's happened in such tragic circumstances there, because obviously you knew about it in the regional papers and regional news, but obviously nationally and internationally. There is something very unique about it, which can be at times eerie, but when it's full of life and love and exuberance, you realise what a wonderful place a football stadium can be. But there are echoes there and markings that are put there to make sure people never forget that the situation that it found itself in. But having played for that club and knowing what that club means to people around there, it's a wonderful place to be.
So talk about being kind of fallen in better times. talk us through your debut at Hillsborough Prutts. I was there, so I was actually living in Spain at the time.
Were you on the run?
I wasn't too far from Marbella, so yeah, I probably did rub shoulders with quite a few people who the constabulary were interested in.
Some absolute sorts.
I was working over in Gibraltar, not quite as glamorous. But yeah, so I made it back to the first game of the season, Rochdale at home. Yeah, talk us through that goal, mate.
Mate, I bet he was sat behind his screen slagging your barnet off.
He going, yeah, look at this scruffy. Oh, that's not bad. And this is me speaking. If you can, without sounding too much like a twat, this is me speaking about it objectively. Objectively, it's a fucking amazing goal, isn't it? I mean, you watch it and you watch it, but the other side of it is, if I'd have tried that another 99 times and thought about it, dude. I mean, if you're in the cop, you'd have got that in the face. If you were out on the kind of Middlewood Road, or I mean, if you know the club shop, you'd have probably caught it in your hands going, where's this ball come from? Oh, that's the new signing that's tried to smash one in with his left foot on the volley from outside the box. It's something that it's a 1 in a million shot. And I was just glad that on that particular day when the sun was shining against the mighty Rochdale, it went in the top corner, which I suppose, that season kind of ebbed and flowed under Gary and when Dave Jones came in. But I suppose it's a decent enough way to endear to fans, isn't it? Obviously, apart from having long hair, which seems to be the first part. Yeah, he had long hair. Brilliant. Yeah, that was it. Done and dusted. But it was. It was a wonderful way to start.
As you know, I'm not one to kind of blow smoke up someone's arse, but there's a few certain games and goals I remember very vividly from that season. That first game being one, another one being Oldham away, where we talk about Aaron Davis turning into Messi. Jesus Christ. David Prutton pirouetting in the box before curling one into the side of the net. Jesus.
The great way I say that was me frantically trying to get the ball under control, hence the fact that it looked like I was slaloming through people. People probably going, let's get out of this nutter's way. And then getting to the point where you think, you might as well just smash it as hard as you can now, which ended up skidding in the bottom corner. And it was good because it was obviously that end where the Wednesday fans were, so you get to go and celebrate with them. And then Gary Megson being Gary Megson and bless him for his bluntness. He said something along the lines afterwards was, oh, good job you scored that. I was like, yeah, I know. He said, yeah, because you were fucking hopeless. I think we were going to bring you off. So, nice. Cheers for that, Gaffer. Yeah, just a pat on the back would have done next time. But it was and it was good. And again, there were similarities of putting a group of people together. And I think you'd be more versed in this than I am, John, but in the sense that it felt to me like quite a likeable squad of players. You know what I mean? You've had some proper players there. I mean, when you've had John Sheridan in the middle of midfield and you kind of hanging around with me and Chris Lyons, and Lyons is a very, very good player, but you're kind of going, Wednesday fans know a good player when they see one. They also appreciate someone who actually gives a shit and runs around. And I think that's kind of what they felt with regards to the group of players that we put together.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of affection from the fans to that squad. I think, to be honest, it came from the manager down. Obviously, fans loved Mego at the time. I've listened to a number of podcasts where people have talked about Megson, but kind of what were your kind of views on it? Obviously, you signed for him. What were your kind of views? What any kind of really funny stories? What was his demeanour like around the place?
He was as arsey as you'd probably see. I remember meeting him because I had a year left at Swindon, but as I said, we were very, very poor, and it was a toxic dressing room. Manager was changed, and I said it's probably best if you probably get me out of here. Not me because it's my fault, but me because I'm one of the people that to move forward you probably need to get rid of some dead wood. And I was as wood came, I was pretty dead that season. But so then I spoke to a former colleague of mine who was at Wednesday and was kind of testing the water, if you like. And it kind of fed back through various channels that if you can get out of Swindon for if they could get me for no money, basically. So I kind of wrote off the last year of my contract there and then went to Wednesday. And I think so. I flew back. We were on holiday in the summer. I flew back from a medical. I think Mego was there. I had a brief chat. Flew back. Finished my holiday. Came back. First day training. Prutts, yeah, I got you right. Fucking hell, I thought you'd have at least had your haircut. Brilliant. That's where we're going to start. And but you knew exactly where you stood with him. He was very honest. He was blunt. Very, very blunt. Probably the bluntness that wouldn't sit too well in management these days, because I think we all know the impact and the kind of gravity that can be put behind a swear word. But when you are called that certain swear word, 3 or 4 times a day in training, but by the time you get screamed at you on a Saturday afternoon, you're kind of going, I think it's a term of affection now, so I think he wants me to keep doing what I'm doing, which was never the case. But he was good as gold. I was going right with him. We used to go run up the Grenoside Woods in pre-season, so that shows the old school element of what we did. Let's run until everyone kind of feels sick and everyone's hamstrings are about to burst. But he used to kind of come with us and be flitting in and around a couple of groups that were running, and then do a bit of fitness himself. But this one time he got lost, and we're coming back winding through these country lanes, and he comes bursting through the hedge, like big red face in the middle of summer, big red face, and then ginger barnet all over the place. Kind of looks in the window and goes, don't any of you fuckers tell anyone about the fact I got lost. I'm from round here. And I was like, no, of course not, Gaffer. We pulled away, and I was like, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. Absolutely crazy. And the fact that he'd been thrashing us around there, and then it unfortunately lost by himself. But he was like I said, very blunt, very honest. Good. And that's, if you speak to footballers, the biggest bugbear about some managers is them not being straight with you. If you think I'm crap, tell me I'm crap and tell me what I need to do better. If you like me, play me, put me in the side, and that's what he was like.
Was he disappointed when Megson left? Because he was quite fond of, wasn't he, from the fans anyway?
No, what was Wednesday? Was Mega disappointed when he left Wednesday?
Were you and the players?
Well, again, it was that when planners, whenever a manager goes, there's people that are genuinely chewing, the selfish ones because they've been playing, and the selfish ones that haven't been playing, like, yes, he's gone. You know what I mean? Get someone else in, swab the decks clear, and let's get cracking. So there was a bit of both, and I don't think any of that was personal. It's the professional side of being footballers. The ones who are picked are happy. The ones who aren't picked aren't happy, and they're waiting for someone to come in and change. And it was ironic that it was after the Sheffield derby that we won 1-0. Which, by the way, this was something that I fast forward a couple of months at the end of the season. Goal of the season was Chris O'Grady's winning header in the Steel City derby, and I was like, after a couple of drinks, that header was the best goal of the season. Getting a bit bullish now. Did nobody see my goal against Rochdale on the first day? And I was like, can't remember. Are you fucking joking? This is rubbish. And it was, and Chris being what he was, so quiet and kind of unassuming. I was like, and he's boring as well. This is rubbish. He's not even celebrating. This is, but he'd won it for that, and it was, and that was vivid memories of Mego looking up and punching his chest like that and giving it all this towards the United fans, because. When we talk about nailing your colours to a mast, my God, obviously with his family lineage, they were always going to be Wednesday, weren't they? And he had no qualms about showing exactly, a bit like Neil Warnock's like with Sheffield United, he's got no qualms about showing how much he loves a particular club.
And just before we move on from Wednesday, that season, we had so many players. I've watched since being locked down, I've watched the season review, and there's players who kind of pop up and score a goal, and I think, I thought you played for us. Like David McGoldrick at Yeovil away scoring. Yes. We had Niall Range at the end of the season. We had Mike Jones came and scored against Berry. These players, I'm like, I can't remember you ever playing for Wednesday, and then there they were.
It's amazing.
But then again, we also have players like Redder Johnson that season. And my question was going to be like, when you got players coming and when you coming and going, like. How which characters were massive that season, and how did you kind of keep a continuity? It's the nature of a club of that size, I think. When it's looking to get things right, especially that level, then there is we played Bristol Rovers, and Chris Lyons played really well against us the next week, or no more than 2 weeks later. He was in the dressing room. I thought, hello, you're right. What? Oh, we signed him. Yeah, brilliant. And that was kind of the case. Mike Jones. I felt for him a little bit because he'd play well for a game, and then Dave Jones would take him out and like, cheers, mate, bye. And then Jones would be looking around, what? Have I missed something here? And he didn't play again. Reader was another big cult hero. There were Nicky Weaver is a lad that we know, and another big kind of personality, very comfortable in what he'd done, and
and what he'd managed to achieve in his career. Ryan Lowe, obviously, gone on to be a successful manager so far. All kind of these big characters and smaller characters that went on. Kieran Lee, who's another player that we played against, and the next minute is in the dressing room. Played him at fullback, and with the greatest respect, relatively underwhelming as a fullback. Got put into midfield after an injury kind of crisis, and became, I mean, in the seasons that followed, one of Wednesday's most consistent and best players. And it was almost, because Kieran was that quiet, it was almost as if, I think he'd obviously played there before, but because he's that quiet, he'd never mentioned it. And he kind of went, yeah, I've played there a few times. Like, Kieran, you're one of the best midfielders in the Championship. And he was like, just completely unassuming and underwhelmed. But like, why didn't you tell the manager this? I didn't think. So you weren't in the team as a right back, and you weren't in the team, and then you got put into midfield, and you've done this. But again, a really good bunch. There was big personalities such as Clinton and Jermaine Johnson. The first time I'd played against them before, but in that preceding season at Swindon, was listening to an argument unfold during the game between those two. I was like, and it was. I mean, it went deep. It was emotional. It was borderline violent. I mean, the undertones of it were absolutely horrendous. And I said to one, I said, "You always do it." And he went, "Yeah, pretty much." And then when I saw it first time, I was like, "Yeah, you do it pretty much, do you?" But Jermaine, on his day, playable, and Clinton was getting to the point where I think he kind of had enough. Really, it achieved a lot, and it's like he's naturally exuberant, wonderful in the dressing room, but he wasn't really getting a look in on the Mego. And Gary Medine, everyone's favourite rogue, was he was getting spa treatments on a Monday while the rest of us were terrorising around Middlesbrough, getting fitter, which was bizarre.
John mentioned forgettable players there, but before we move on, just a couple of questions about your career as a whole. Who's the most memorable player that you've played with? Not necessarily the best, but the one that always sticks in mind from your long career.
There's one which hopefully it's quite an understated presence, but he's a man that I learned a lot of at a stage of my career, and just because he had a fantastic career. He was very tight with Gordon Strachan. So Paul Telfer, when I went to Southampton, former Coventry, he was at Southampton, went to Celtic. Very quiet, very unassuming. I mean, he existed before I met him, and he's existed long after we've semi-lost touch a little bit, which I'm a little bit sad about. But off the back of this, I shall endeavour to do, as we're all doing in lockdown, contact people that we've not spoken to in ages, just to say, how you doing? And them going, can you piss off and not contact me again? you only texting me because you're out of people's neck.
Was he not married to Strachan's daughter? Is that why they were so close? Is that right? Is that how it goes?
Great ever mate. So was that the rumour that Strax only signed him because it was his son-in-law?
That's the rumour I've heard, whether it's true or not.
I'm gonna have to check with the legal department here to see if we can put that in, but we'll leave it.
Yeah, he's definitely not. I mean, he was just a really good. I mean, the first few times the first kind of 6 months training with him at Southampton, and there'd be him and Paul Williams and Chris Marsden and a few of the older pros at the back, kind of very fit, very kind of setting an example, but always kind of like talking to each other. That paranoia about being the new kid, kind of going, fucking talking about me. What's looking over here? And like kind of questioning everything that you did football wise, and just testing you out really. And then grew to be really close friends with Telf, and he was just a good lad, very straightforward. I mean, one of the fittest, if not the fittest footballer I've ever seen. I mean, and he was without stereotyping people from Scotland. He liked to drink. he liked to enjoy himself. Get up in the morning, fresh as a daisy. First, I think there's possibly a few of us that tried to emulate him, but crashed and burned and failed miserably. Another one's Jack Lester, who's a son of Yorkshire, who has gone on to do wonderful things with producing younger players at certain places. But again, another lad that just hit the right person at the right time. Similar sense of humour, talk shy, enjoyed playing football. Nearly got sent up as many times as I did, so we've got a lot in common.
And finally, not one on your career, but you're now as a pundit, a presenter in the media side of things. I just want to get your opinion on the current state of the game in terms of, if we cannot finish the season, going off topic a bit, how do you think the Championship, League One, League Two, etc., should be decided if it can't be played on the pitch?
Well, I can understand we had the pleasure of speaking to Gaz Ainsworth the other day, and Bayoak in Fenway, and obviously Gaz is very much at Wycombe at the forefront of what managers are needing to do in certain divisions. And he referenced what they were doing in the Bundesliga of teams being able to quarantine in a hotel on their own for a week before they run up to this weekend's games, which, from a financial point of view, Wycombe are never ever going to be there, are they? Let's be honest. So there's a very real concern for them going forward financially. I think if you're looking at relegation and promotion getting settled, if football can't be played with a points per game element, out of all the choices, yes, it's still one of the worst case scenarios, but I'm still all for that kind of, and people talk about the integrity of the league, and that's become a real kind of buzz phrase, but to start something else, it feels like we've got to try whichever way we do it to finish one, to know where we're going to be. And I can understand why there's people talk about Leeds and Liverpool going, well, of course they want it to finish and be done, either a points per game or get the games done or awarded to them because they're in wonderful positions. And the people that are in such good positions are saying, let's cancel it, null and void, let's start again whenever we can, do it safely. But it's a staggered reaction for me. If we can get them done safely, fantastic. If we can't, try and work out the kind of sporting merit. And I think the very last resort is disbanding it and just kicking it into touch and cancelling it, because yes, it can be seen as something trivial as a football match, but there's so many things that are connected to it, I think.
Just think, if every championship game is like shown live behind closed doors, how many times we're going to see Dave Prutton's face on Sky Sports? We'll see him more than bloody Rishi Sunak, won't we?
Hey, Rishi's nailing it, isn't he, at the moment? I mean, my God.
Yeah, he's all right.
Talk about stepping into the breach and what the real brass tacks of what your first kind of real problems are in a job that you've just got, and steaming forward and trying to lead the country. So, but yeah, I mean, so it's funny, isn't it? Because again, like I said at the very top of all this, global health, the health of the people that we know and love, our basic humanity to each other, means that we want everyone to be as healthy and as prosperous as we possibly can be. Tied to actual physical health is economic health, mental health, emotional health. We all, hopefully with an ounce of common sense, we all know that, don't we? But we're not at the stage yet where that goes without saying. But then we look at the powers that be, the Premier League talking about it, Rick Parrott, the EFL talking about it, and people say, no, it's a moral vacuum. It should be. Well, that's what they're for. They're there to discuss this. If they were just sat on their hands, there'd be a lot of people going, well, the government are trying to do their thing. This sector's doing their thing. What's football trying to do? And so, well, they're not doing anything. Well, no, they've got to be seen to be doing something. So they're trying their best, it feels, to try and thrash something out. A lot of it's reactive. A lot of it is dependent on what the science tells us. Again, another key phrase that's come out of this, Christ. And it's day by day. Like I said, I think we're all kind of bated breath to see what happens with the Bundesliga, and whether that's, I mean, it's not an exact example, but the similarities, isn't there, with what's going on in this country.
Wonderful stuff. Prutts, thank you very much. Stick with us, though, because coming up very shortly, we'll be picking out our top 10 managers to have managed in Yorkshire. And I imagine, well, if previous weeks are anything to go by, there's going to be a little bit of debate involved, so stick with us. So welcome back to the Yorkshire Football Podcast, where this week we're joined by former Sheffield Wednesday and Leeds man David Prutton. And it's time to look at our top 10 managers to have managed in Yorkshire. As we said at the start, there's been some discussion on how to approach this, but we'll leave it up to you to decide which is right, which is wrong. Should they be judged on the achievements of their career or just their time spent in Yorkshire? So we've picked out, or the three lads have picked out their top 10 managers who have at some point in their career managed in this fine county. And I think we'll start with Flanners. Give us your top 10 so we can dissect and debate.
Top 10. So you want me to read all of them out, yeah?
Go on.
I'm speaking through gritted teeth here, by the way, not having a Doncaster gaffer in there, even though I could have easily snuck one in. Gone Phil Parkinson, David Wagner, Steve Bruce, Steve McLaren, Marcelo Bielsa, Chris Wilder, Ron Atkinson, Howard Wilkinson, Herbert Chapman, and Don Revit.
So that is absolutely void already. You haven't got Jack Charlton in there, manager of Sheffield Wednesday, who got us promoted from Division 3, went on to manage Ireland, took them to a World Cup quarter-final, managed Middlesbrough as well.
Is David Prutton quoted earlier? What did you even quote earlier? Is David Prutton quoted opinion?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was more to it. I mean, as quotes go, it was more wordy than that. But I think
it was just a rough path that we went down.
We're dealing in buzzwords here.
That's the tale of the times, isn't it? Okay, so we'll come back to the 10 everyone selected properly in detail afterwards, in case we missed any out. But John Riley, hits with your 10.
Oh mate, I haven't got a 10.
What?
Hang on.
It's like countdown.
I thought we were going to do one. I thought we were going to do one manager each, and then that kind of created our 10.
So you've written 1 down.
2, and I've got 3. I've got 3 down.
Go on, hit us with 3, and then we'll judge the strength of your argument.
So my 3 were going to be Jack Charlton, Sheffield Wednesday manager in the late 70s, when Wednesday were at their lowest ebb, and I mean the lowest ebb. They just finished in the bottom half of the old Division 3, League 1 as it is now. Managed to pull us round, got us promoted ahead of Sheffield United in the famous Boxing Day massacre. Couldn't quite get us promoted from Division 2 into Division 1, but left us in a million times better place than we had been. Went on to manage Newcastle and do really well, and then managed Republic of Ireland, getting them to a World Cup quarter-final. So yeah, Jack Charlton will be one of mine. Second would be Herbert Chapman, going proper old school here. The Huddersfield Town manager, who managed them for 2 of their 3 in a row in the 20s, went on to manage Arsenal and won them a further 2 league championships. I think as iconic managers go from Yorkshire, he's definitely got to be up there. And my third would have been, just edging out Brian Clough, my third would have been Don Reeve, the Leeds manager of the late 60s and 1970s. Saying that through gritted teeth, obviously, as a big Wednesday fan. But I think that Leeds team of that era I'd say it endeared the team. It didn't, because obviously they were horrible teams to play against, but it kind of drew fans in from around the country, just from their style of play, from watching them, and from kind of building a team up into something from nothing into kind of being one of the teams in Europe. It's something that not many managers can claim to have done. So Jack Charlton, Herbert Chapman, and Don Reeve.
Very, very strong choices.
I think what he's managed to do is flesh out 3 choices very, very well there. He's kind of got us off the centre bit, hasn't he, there? Well done, Riley.
Totally forgot about it. That's good blagging, as they say in the industry. Prutts, hits with your 10 then. Any new faces?
Not overly. A couple that Flanners has reminded me of. So mine were, and this was as my stream of consciousness kind of seeped out, David Wagner.
Yep.
Steve Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Bassett.
Okay.
Who?
Don Revie. Chris Wilder. Howard Wilkinson. Neil Warnock.
Oh, okay.
How many is that?
Prutts, we take this quite seriously, this podcast, mate. I know it's like a joke to you. Like, come on, just take time. We've invited you on. It's a bit of a laugh. We're taking it seriously, pal.
Most things are to me, mate. I think I've got to 8, and I was struggling with 8.
I think you've got 7 so far.
7. But if I'm going to beef mine up, my 7 plus Riley's 3. I mean, that makes a pretty formidable 10, doesn't it?
That's a good team effort. Right. I like this. So can
we give pros and cons on different people? Can we?
Yeah, go on. That's what I was going to say. Who would you like to pick apart first? Who's the one name that stood out to you, do you think, out of the 3 list?
Well, I mean, the one that, if I'm mistaken, we've got the last English manager to win the top division in here with Leeds, Howard Wilkinson.
Yeah,
correct.
Obviously, the dawn of the Premier League brought untold riches and a wonderful foreign contingent. But he's the last Englishman, isn't he, to stand there with the best team in the country. What Chris Wilder's done with Sheffield United, yes, I mean it'll be regardless of your football allegiances. what they've done this year and the last couple of years and what he's done with that team I think is absolutely phenomenal. David Wagner getting a team up like Huddersfield, with the greatest respect, was it in the 5 seasons or the seasons before they went out of the Championship, never finished above 16th, stayed in the Premier League for 2 seasons. I mean, Hull City's along the same lines. Phil Brown, we didn't mention. Phil Brown getting him up. Steve Bruce making it relatively straightforward. I think the achievements with the teams that they had and the clubs that they got, they're absolutely ginormous. You've got to mention Don Revie because of what he built, what he created. But I think managers, and again, a manager such as Neil Warnock, my God, does he divide opinion, but my God, is he effective? And I've got a lot of time for him because I think I like the way he's gone about it. So I'd like to think that I've ticked several boxes there without actually mentioning anyone from overseas. No.
That's pretty good. I wanted to bring up actually one that Flanners mentioned in Phil Parkinson. Would he make everyone's top 10 as a modern era manager for the achievements that he had at Bradford? I imagine that's the reason you included him.
What is achievements, by the way? Because I just list his achievements.
He's promoted from League Two, but I'll let Flans take it away.
So yeah, promoted from League Two, took Bradford to the League Cup final, where they got battered by Swansea. I believe Parkinson was the manager as well when they famously won at Stamford Bridge in the FA Cup. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying as well that is the last time Chelsea were 2-0 up at Stamford Bridge and lost.
Factoid. Love that, Flanners. Love a factoid.
So yeah, I think that's a pretty
right.
Good
Right. Did I detect a hint of sarcasm in that question?
I say we've got to have Parkinson in there, surely.
If we're going to have Parkinson, right, for his achievements, so in my 10, which I had written down, so I went a little bit different. I'm a bit more old school than these young pups. I went a little bit different. So, but I didn't put Trevor Francis in there for Wednesday because I thought it was. But if you're going to have Phil Parkinson,
there he is.
If you're going to have Phil Parkinson for getting a team promoted from League 7, and get into a League Cup final, then I feel a bit uneasy about not having Tricky Trev in there. So, as you say, he took over a team that just got promoted from the old second division, led them to 3rd place in the first division. Could have won the league with 2 or 3 weeks to go, and then the season into Europe, and the season after to an FA Cup final and the League Cup final.
I think
so. Chris Wilder getting to 7th looks kind of bang average, yeah.
With a relatively similar bunch of players that he was winning League One with,
hammering League One with as well, not just winning, just absolutely bulldozering everyone.
And Phil Parkinson getting a team to the League Cup final. I'm gonna throw in another one. Then we've got Ron Atkinson, who gets a team outside of the top division, not just kind of a day out at Wembley to the final where they get absolutely pumped by a top division team. They go and beat Man United in the League Cup final. And we haven't even mentioned Big Ron. And
what division were Wednesday then?
The second division.
So we're talking a 4th division team here. 4th division team beating Arsenal, Villa, Premier League opposition along the way. Absolutely, just to get that far and to get to a League Cup final in the same season you achieve promotion. I'm with Flanners on this. 1 individual manager awards, didn't he, from the LMA? Achievements, etc. He's got to be at least a 10.
Without having Google to hand, if you look at where he's been and the amount of time that he's spent at each specific club, there's a solid career that's been built there on long-term management and being in a place for more than a season. We've seen managers flit in and out of different clubs, but what Parky's managed to do is build a career. And I think there are obviously some stellar names on this list. Is it purely about silverware at the end of it? I mean, Bielsa's the one that the jury's out on. Yes, Leeds have performed a quantum leap under what he's done. Still not won anything. If we throw it forward, and I know it's not remotely in anywhere near Yorkshire, but the way that Pochettino's revered, still didn't come away with what Spurs fans are after, but he's still deemed as a great manager. So greatness can come in all shapes and forms, like this Zoom call that I'm looking at with all 4 different faces on.
So what he's saying is
That's a lovely answer.
So he's saying being a Nearly man is greatness. So he nearly won the League Cup. He nearly made it onto Sunderland Till I Die. So let's get him the top 10. Get him a trophy. Get him in.
I can't. I'm not having this. He's got to make at least 10th for those achievements at Bradford.
Okay,
absolutely
I tell you what.
Unbelievable.
Right, we'll put it out there to our social followers. If you think that Phil Parkinson is amongst the 10 best managers to have managed in this great county, then doesn't tell me, because I think you're wrong.
Parkinson as well. Very unlucky not to be promoted to the Championship with Bradford. They got beaten in the playoff final.
Nearly again.
Yeah.
We mentioned David Wagner.
I'm sorry. If we're going to throw it out there, he's nowhere near the same class as Dave Bassett. He's nowhere near Dave Bassett, and I'll say being Leeds United. I don't know how many times that guy got promoted to the top division. I'm going to say it's 3 or 4 with Sheffield United. I think he did it with maybe Watford or Wimbledon before then, and then with Forest again. His CV compared to Parkinson is just kind of chalk and cheese. So
getting to the League Cup final though, with a team like Bradford in the fourth tier, it's unheard of.
But how many leagues? How many games are there in a League Cup campaign?
I don't know, mate.
8 tops, perhaps maybe 8 if you back then.
Yeah, if you get all the way through to the final. I mean, there's the debate about what's more respectable: winning a league as a campaign, or having that slice of luck that gets you through a cup run. With regards to the draw, with regards to injury, form, and fitness, then it's basically Riley's belittling people's achievements, Flanners, and we know why that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Why
he hates people.
No, because you know how hard for me it is to kind of even say Dave Bassett's name. So bringing him up as as my preferred,
as your argument
for an argument is completely different. So I think if you'd have said anybody else, I'm just not sure Phil Parkinson is worthy of space in our top 10. Top 50, yep, I'll give you that one, but maybe not top 10.
Christ, top 50. We're here till dawn if we're doing top 50.
Dean Saunders in there, if finance.
I wanted to bring up one more modern day. We mentioned David Wagner, which I think we're all fairly in agreement of for his achievements at Huddersfield.
Absolutely.
There's an excellent interview with Dean Hoyle that came out today, I think, in the Examiner, where he talks about, for the first time, really, that journey, and of course, David Wagner then leaving the club as well. Chris Wilder's been brought up a couple of times. Are we? Is that a definite that he's got to be top 10 because he's just completely transformed that Sheffield United side that looks stuck in League One forever.
Yeah.
Near back-to-back promotions, 2 promotions in 3 seasons, and now look at him knocking on the door of Europe as well. It's got to be up there for his time at Sheffield United.
Yeah, I think he's been, like I said earlier on, with the players that he's done it with and the manner that he's done it with. I'm not just going for the aesthetic side of how his team play football, but there's a manager who goes to win games, not to lose them. And that, to me, in the current modern day, yes, they're probably going to get some significant financial backing. You know what I mean? They're not going out swinging willy-nilly against the big hitters. He's looking to outthink and outfight and outplay him. And he's one of the most authentic managers I think we've got in the Premier League at this moment in time.
But when this season gets cancelled and there's an asterisk next to an exit, basically what they've done this season won't count, and I won't acknowledge it. So, just a poor man's Nigel Pearson.
Oh, brutal, absolutely brutal tonight, Riley. To be fair, though, would you? I don't know how this would work, but if the Premier League just said, right, we take it as in Sheffield United getting to Europe on a technicality, would you take it if it meant the Championship took the home and away, or the first game against an opposition type thing that has been discussed? Because then that would put Sheffield Wednesday third. After you've played everyone once, apparently Sheffield Wednesday would be third.
I think after going into the Boxing Day fixture, we had Stoke away, and I'm pretty sure we'd just drawn with
the bounce. I'm sure you won on the bounce.
We've done really well. We'd drawn with Leeds at home, where we should have probably beat them at home. Leeds were poor. We did really well. Fletcher hit the bar, and we'd won a couple. And then going into that game, I think if we'd have beat Stoke, we'd have. Cause I think Leeds were the tea time game maybe that day. We'd have closed the gap on Leeds to kind of a couple of points. We got done with 2 goals in the last 2 minutes away at the Britannia, which is ridiculous. And then we went on this terrible run of form. So to your original question, I wouldn't mind if Sheffield United got into Europe in the UEFA in the Europa League, because nobody takes the Europa League serious anyway. Let them go to Bratislava or Poznan or these backwack places. I'd rather go to Preston and Rotherham anyway.
And lose 2-0, as it seems to be for Sheffield Wednesday at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't mind. No, in fairness, I just hope the season gets finished where everyone's happy. As I said before on this podcast,
good luck with that.
Never happened.
It's not going to happen. I just want the teams in League One, and I'm a big kind of advocate for lower league in the Leagues 1 and 2 in the EFL, making sure that
survival.
The guys in League 1 and League 2 come through it, and there's no kind of issues regarding administration and teams going out of business. Teams in the Premier League, leave them to it. If that means Sheffield United get Champions League, top 2, don't mind. There's enough money in the Premier League. Championship clubs, I think, will be okay. But the teams at the bottom of League 1 and League 2, just hoping that they can come through this okay, and we start next season with a full complement, and that even the likes of Bury can kind of sort themselves out. Well, it can be a resolved issue there, and the teams kind of come through it, and we start next season with a full bill of health.
What a genuine guy.
I told you we had a heart, lads. I told you.
What a genuine guy.
Called us so many times.
That was
If Wednesday had been promoted a couple of seasons ago, though, I'd have been like, screw the EFL.
You know what? I think that's a lovely way to finish the podcast, on a rarity of a nice showing of heart from John Riley there. So we'll wrap it up for this week's episode of the Yorkshire Football Podcast. Before we go, though, I'm sure we'll all be tuning into some live football this weekend, even though it's quite far away from Yorkshire, being in the Bundesliga. Are we all backing? We all got teams to support, and why?
Yeah, I'm going to go Wolfsburg. Went to watch them about 3 years ago and they got beat.
Good. Like Donny then. I like it.
That's my affiliation.
Prutts, you got a Bundesliga team?
I could lie and say yes. I will be honest and say no. So I'll go with Flanners. You've sold me with the whole Wolfsburg. Seen them once, they lost.
Unbelievable.
The law of averages said they should win this weekend.
What a following they're going to have.
I've heard of Wolfsburg, so they'll do. Riley, Bundesliga team, yes or no?
Well, my team in Germany, my team in Germany, are actually Die Löwen, 1860 Munich.
Oh,
so
me too. Lovely. So we're united in something.
Yeah, so they're my team, a real cult team. But in the Bundesliga this week, I'm actually going to be paying a lot of attention to Schalke versus Dortmund, the big derby. I'm actually interviewing 2 of their big podcasters tomorrow, so I'm hoping I get a really good bit of banter going there, and I'll be watching that one with a lot of anticipation.
Lovely stuff. Well, I didn't expect that.
Wow!
It's nice
wow. I thought I was gonna just say, don't you just hate football and hipsters? But then he backed it up with that, so I'll not knock you for that, John. And good luck with it tomorrow. I hope your German's up to scratch, my friend.
Ich bin eine Frankfurter, as they say, yeah.
Just that on repeat constantly until the end of a podcast. Wonderful. I can't wait to listen to that. And it's thank you to everyone for listening to this podcast as well. It's thank you to John, Matt, and our special guest for this week, David Prutton, as well. Thanks, chaps.
Pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, boys.
Join us.
Stay safe.
Join us next week. We'll be back talking all things Yorkshire footy.